Your Excellency, the Executive Governor of Kaduna State, Malam Nasir al-Rufai, our host, the Excellency Deputy Governor, Honorable Ministers, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. This is going to be an interesting discussion because for me, it's going to be easy because I'll be the one throwing questions and interference. And I would also ask that members be ready with their questions because we will also open the floor for discussions. So I would like to go right into the conversation. And the conversation is Kaduna State, right? Someone says, when you fail to plan, you plan to fail. I made a comment yesterday that I have in my life, for the first time, a leader in Nigeria has articulated a comprehensive vision and plan. And if any of you have not yet seen the document, it's actually available online, the 5-year plan. And that would be the starting point for this conversation. But the prerequisites that have been listed, and I even flipped, I have, as the moderator, I have flipped the order. They put opportunities before challenges. I look at challenges as the opportunity that we need to mine to make Kaduna great. Never mind Trump, because as the governor mentioned, Trump must have stolen it from Kaduna State. Uche, I'm going to go right to you. In the document, there is over about 640 billion in the next 5 years that the state government is going to be bringing on, and there is a gap of about 800 billion or so thereabouts that we need to put together to achieve those comprehensive and bold goals that the Kaduna state government wants to do. If I were to ask, where would NSIA going to put its money? And I suppose I would also ask you again, some of those projects to me looks bankable. Are they, or what would you do to make them bankable? Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. First of all, I will join everyone in expressing my gratitude to the government for giving us an opportunity to support what I think is shaping up to be a fantastic event, not just for Kaduna State, but as a template for how people should think to invest and partner with various state governments. I wasn't here yesterday, but I had the opportunity of reviewing the governor's presentation, and I think there are a few things that I laid out that appeal to us. The first thing is we have noticed that there's a strategic approach to the development plan, but more importantly also the clusters that the government has focused on are some of the clusters that appeal to us. And by that, he identified the handful of areas that I want to address. The first is agriculture, and the second is what he described as waste to wealth, which we would like to describe as waste to energy, as one of the subsectors that appeals to the NSIA. Let me just describe the NSIA and how we invest, and then maybe I can tell you what will appeal to us. The first thing is, many of you are probably not aware that 60% of the NSIA's funds is invested in security instruments, so bonds, equities, currencies, and the like. But 40% is dedicated to local infrastructure investments. And our interest in infrastructure is, as the moderator described, in bankable projects. And when we look at agriculture, we identified 3 ways we want to participate in agriculture. The first is through fund investments. One of the first investments we made was in a fund for agriculture finance. In fact, it was the first investment we made in infrastructure. We invested $5 million and helped that fund to facilitate 10 times that amount. And they're now beginning to make active investments. I know they made investments in Kaduna, the dairy farm. They're looking at a few other investments in tomato. And we're going to be looking through a few things where we will also co-invest with that fund. So agriculture is one area we're looking at, but we went through a fund, first of all. The second thing we're doing in agriculture right now is actually partnering with another state in the southwest to rehabilitate land that had been wasted. 108 hectares of land. 108,000 hectares of land that have been blighted. And we're working with Lafarge and the state to rehabilitate that for agriculture. These are opportunities we're looking at. And then the third thing, obviously, is hoping to help build the infrastructure of agriculture. We have expressed recently our interest is expanded into looking at fertilizer as an area of investment, extension services as an area of investment. These areas may not necessarily be the most high return area for us, but as a portfolio, we expect that this will be something that will work with the NSIA. So as guidelines are being rolled out by the state, we will seek specific areas to invest, be it debt or be it equity within the state. The other thing that I think is important, as I mentioned, is power. We have seen small projects for waste power, we have seen small projects for hydro dam for power, we have seen small projects for embedded power for industrial clusters. These are things that are very important for us. So as Kaduna State starts to look to, as the theme says, joining the global economy, these clusters are very important. I will encourage the state to think in terms of competitive clusters. As you're reviving Peugeot automobile, look for competitive clusters around it for the supply chain. These areas will actually be something that will present an opportunity for the kind of capital that we can mobilize. So these are probably my first submission, and I'm very clear things I'll say. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. If you would permit me, because there is a lot of money being discussed here, and a lot of infrastructural opportunities, etc., etc. But if you don't have what I call the key ingredient, that is the human capital element of it going in, we may actually be surprised that might become a catalyst that we need to reignite. And so I'm talking about education, but in general, social investment, the social welfare element. However, education is key. When we talk about education, particularly in the north, girl-child education comes in, it becomes very critical. Down the road, 50% of the workforce may be sidelined as a result of not getting that early enough. What are the plans in engaging with Kaduna State from your side of the equation in actualizing those dreams?
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I too would like to congratulate Kaduna on this very commendable initiative and for the privilege of being invited to speak about the interventions that the federal government has planned in terms of social investment. It is obvious that the middle class has been disappearing and many Nigerians have fallen below the poverty line, and enrollment and especially completion rates for our girls need to be addressed in a very focused and concerted manner, especially because a lot of issues have been raised that have muddled the waters. The numbers of children that are predisposed to malnutrition and harsh conditions have more than doubled, and we have a teeming population of youth, of working age population, including women who are not productive because they do not have the education or the skills poverty, no doubt, poses the largest threat to the Nigerian state. We have over 120 million living on less than $2 a day, over 18 million unemployed, and 11 million suffering from malnutrition. Now, in respect of Kaduna State, the statistics are a bit, they're not as current as they should be, but the household surveys are going on now. The DHS and the World Bank poverty mapping says 41% of citizens of Kaduna suffer from consumption poverty, which means food insecurity. 3.8% of total infants in Kaduna do not survive. 30% of working age are jobless. 42% are out of school. Only about, that's 42% of children. Only about 22% of the total population use improved sanitation facilities. 42% of children suffer malnutrition, and about 69% of the total population of Kaduna State do not have access to financial services. So the federal government is looking at working with the state governments in trying to improve a lot of the indices that we witness around the country. There are plans for job creation to train unemployed graduates as teachers, something like a teacher corps. Then also for the artisans and associations, market women associations, women cooperatives, about 500,000 and 100,000 artisans. There's a homegrown school feeding program that Kaduna has already begun, but the federal government intends to partner as soon as the budget is assented to. So that we can train master trainers. And at the end of the period, each beneficiary will take home a tablet with the curricula fed into it. And the curricula is being given to us by DFID, and we're hoping that that will enable them continue to at least do something worthwhile and productive, even if they don't want to. They can't be absorbed by the state government or teachers, schools that exist. There's a Build Nigeria project, which is an accelerated training and certificate program for artisans. And what we're doing is a scoping of all the different businesses that exist in the state. And we would require that information so that we're able to capacitate the beneficiaries by targeting the kinds of businesses that exist. And once we can do that, we can enable them to have access to credit, give them the kind of equipment and the kind of training that they need, and even soft credit, so that they're able to access funds to do their businesses. The homegrown school feeding program is something that has already been mentioned. It's already been taken up by this administration, very commendably. I don't think I need to go into what the benefits are. I think Kaduna is already experiencing that. We're targeting the poorest and the most vulnerable households for cash transfers. We're starting with unconditional transfers because we can see all over the world that direct cash transfers actually improve the nutrition of the family. We're targeting households and paying the females in the household. We're also going to have conditional transfers down the line with co-responsibilities that aim at graduating the families out of poverty and also improving sanitation or health or education enrollment rates. Data gathering is going on, and we're really eager to start in Kaduna as soon as we're given the go-ahead. There's an enterprise fund, as I mentioned, and a STEM bursary program. For our asks, we need We need a focal person from Kaduna State Government that has the access and would coordinate in the State Ministry of Budget and Planning, the coordination of the data collection, because we intend to go into the communities to get to the authentic poor, irrespective and oblivious to the usual patronage and all of that. And we will need offices here, we would need the support of the government, but of course we believe that that will be forthcoming. In conclusion, we thank you for our support, and we commit to working in partnership so that we build up the current capacity of the youth and the women. We plan on engaging the donor partners and to commence our pilots. Thank you very much.
IFC, can you share with us what we will see in launching Kaduna into the global economy by tackling some of the challenges that Kaduna faces when it comes from the point of view of IFC, just like Uche highlighted some key areas. What specific areas are we looking at in engagement of IFC with Kaduna State?
Well, first of all, thank you for the opportunity to be here. It's very exciting to see the amount of enthusiasm and momentum around this conversation, around what investors and stakeholders can do in Kaduna State to actually move the state forward. And I suspect that other states will follow suit. I think it's going to be very important in the future to see various states in the country really pulling up their boots, ensuring that they're figuring out how to be competitive in this new global economy. For IFC, we've been in Nigeria for several decades now, and of late it has been very important for us to really focus on how we really build up the real sector. And so we have put in place an energy business plan which intends to focus on how do we build across the energy value chain, from distribution to generation to gas development and solar, for example. How do you make sure that across the energy value chain there is sufficient investment to ensure that Nigerians and Nigerian businesses can get the benefit of affordable and accessible power? That is a critical priority for us. It extends itself to Kaduna, but it's really a national priority for us. And so over the next few years, you're really going to see us doubling down on that effort. We have spent a lot of time and resources to really build out that vision. The key thing to keep in mind is that there's quite a bit of regulatory risk as you look at the energy sector, but we recognize that IFC, that if we're going to be relevant in the Nigerian space, we have to actually understand how to structure around those regulatory risks and ensure that we can get investment into the space. So you'll see us be much more formidable in that space going forward. How Kaduna plays into that, I think Kaduna will be a beneficiary of those investments, directly and indirectly. We'd love to see projects actually originated in Kaduna as well. I think Kaduna could be a state, for example, where you could see quite a bit of solar as a good option as well. So we would be very interested in exploring opportunities like that in Kaduna. In addition to the energy space, the other area that is very important for us at this stage is the agricultural space. We have also developed a plan of action for the institution that involves also the World Bank Group, whereby we are focusing on a couple of value chains and a couple of geographical parts of the country to say, where is it whereby Nigeria can develop a competitive advantage? Where is it that Nigeria can say, this is where if we move the needle, we can make a significant difference in terms of job creation. We could make a significant difference in terms of reducing the food import bill. So this is an area where we're focusing quite a bit of attention. At this stage, I had recently had a conversation with the head of the Nigerian Export Promotion Council. And the interesting thing that came out of that conversation was a mapping across the different states to see which states are competitive in which areas. I think that's a very important exercise to go through because I think at the end of the day, what we need to do is establish where are we competitive. I think somebody said yesterday that import substitution is not the same thing as competitiveness, and this is something that we believe very strongly. If we want to pursue an import substitution agenda, we need to think about how we're going to be competitive. And so figuring out what that competitive landscape is across the country, figuring out where Kaduna is competitive, and it sounds like through this new vision in agriculture and mining that there is a clear focus on where Kaduna does have that competitive advantage, that's when we can move the needle. So it's good to see that alignment. We are really focused on the agricultural space. It's good to see that the state is really focused on that space as well. We'd be very interested in partnering with Kaduna to really move that agenda forward. And the last thing I'll mention is that we have, today we have an investment in Kaduna that we're very happy about. It's a microfinance investment. It's called microcred. We at IFC are very, we think that microfinance is a really important lever for development impact. It really enables us to target people at the lowest part of the pyramid. Microfinance also tends to focus more on women as well. We tend to get more money in the hands of women in the marketplace. And so we're often very excited when we're able to partner with organizations that have viable models that can actually get into the communities quickly. So we have one here in Kaduna. They have 6,000 borrowers, 30,000 depositors. Again, they're based here, their headquarters is here, and we expect them to really expand globally, so across the country rather. So it's very exciting to see the type of innovation happening in Kaduna State. So I think in summary, I would just say that from our perspective, we're very keen to partner with the state as the state goes forward with this economic vision. Frankly, from my perspective, it's this type of thinking that I think is necessary in Nigeria today in order to move the needle. We are big believers that we are in a new normal in Nigeria. If you ask me personally, I wouldn't want to see a world where we're going back to $100 oil prices because, as somebody said earlier, the minister said earlier, oil has blinded Nigeria. So this new normal gives us an opportunity to really operate and figure out what are we good at, what can we produce well, what do we need to focus on in terms of ensuring that we're competitive, and how can we leverage the different stakeholders who are willing to invest in Nigeria to bring that forward. My final point is that this is a very, very challenging time for Nigeria. We are in an environment where we're seeing a lot of investor reticence about coming into the country. And so this is an opportunity for us to really double down, to really make sure that investors understand that the medium to long-term fundamentals of this country remain strong, they remain solid. We have a current period of difficulty, but we will move through that period. And so it's also really exciting to see a state like Kaduna really demonstrating that vision is beyond just the next 6 to 12 months. It's a 4 to 5 year vision, because that's exactly what investors need to see to feel confident to invest. Thank you.
I think this is particularly important, not just because of investors, but also because of the younger generation who are today something like 60–70% of our population. This is an inspiration for them, something that shows that politics is not the dirty word that it has come to be in many parts of the world and also in Nigeria. The State Development Plan has 4 key strategic points on the compass, and those are governance, economic development, security, and social justice. And I think 2 that I, from your question, would like to touch on are the economic development and governance elements of that plan. We tend to think of infrastructure as hard infrastructure, energy, telecommunications, roads. But there's also another element of infrastructure which we should not neglect, and which I see that the state government is focused on. That's the softer side. That's human services, health, and education. Now, if I go back to the hard side, the power side, which is what you've referred to, I was extremely pleased when I heard the Minister of Solid Minerals this morning talk about what nobody has given it a name yet, but I think I will take the liberty of giving it a name. It's the FIME El-Rufai formula. And that is, understand very clearly that the federal government does have a huge presence in many of the key areas that states have to develop. And that's a function of our history. I belong to the school of devolution that pushes very hard for devolution, but I also realize that while that is being done, things have to happen on the ground. And so the right thing to do, of course, is for federal players, ministers, to work closely with the states. And thereby you can then bypass some of those obstacles. So when you have a state government that is working with the federal government on solid minerals, I think it's obvious that it can also do the same thing in the power space. What tends to create a challenge for the growth of our electricity business in the country today is two things that the federal government is fully much in control of, and those are gas and gas transmission and electricity transmission itself. Kaduna is a big state, and I think that if you look at Kaduna within the context of the Northwest, another point which should be made is that we don't have a 150 million person market to address in the country. We actually have a 300 million ECOWAS market to address. And obviously, the biggest player in that market is Nigeria. And if we then begin to think regionally and look at where our various strengths and competitive edges are, in the Northwest, Kaduna is a trigger for the Northwest being able to serve a significant part of the West African hinterland in all sorts of aspects, agriculture, human services that are provided, infrastructure services, power, energy, and that sort of thing. So I would say that the state government should look at the transmission space and how to begin to grow a transmission grid for the Northwest, working with the federal government. There are ways to do that, and perhaps this is not the time to go into detail in that, but I think that's something which, if you focus less on Nigeria and look more at the Northwest, you can then see that the Northwest itself is such a significant market in terms of size, geographical size, population, and the kind of business and social and human activity that can go on in there, that when you look at energy and how to grow energy, you must do something about the transmission grid for the Northwest, and not just the Nigerian grid that happens to have some parts of it in the Northwest. There's a big difference between the two. So with a governor like Governor El-Rufai, I think that, and understanding his own background as someone who has played a huge role in opening up government space for private sector participation, I think it would be a natural thing to follow on the heels of the solid minerals, and do the same thing also in power. The other thing I'd like to touch on very quickly is governance. And you can't, I was once Attorney General of a state, that's Cross River. And there I saw very, very keenly with Donald Duke how important governance is. And there are three elements, are critical in that. Number one, discipline in the civil service. And I'm not talking about laying off people. I'm actually talking about just simply enforcing rules. Right? Just enforcing rules. Civil service is a highly regimented institution, but it's an institution. And you really cannot talk about continuity and growth without talking about how the civil service itself will be a part of that. And the key to that is how you enforce discipline. Just let people know that there are consequences to doing things and also rewards to doing right. Second thing is state institutions, continuity. And we saw here the Speaker of the House of Assembly and what he said about how the legislature works very closely with the executive. The third thing goes back to the first, is about training for the public sector and getting in the right people into the public sector so that they, even when all our political leaders, who really are all ephemeral, and they are the ones who are the decision of the state, how they ensure that continues. So with those two, I think that's pretty much what I'd say.